So downtime is very critical to them. So if you can predict when you're going to be down through particle counting, water sensing, and other things like that, it allows the mill to make better, smarter decisions of when they need to take downtime, and they can be up quicker versus being a catastrophic failure where they could be down a week.
Welcome to another edition of HYDAC On Tap, where we dive into today's topics that are important to our customers, whether they be OEMs, manufacturers, plant managers, all types of customers. Today, I am joined by two distinguished gentlemen. Typically here on HYDAC On Tap, we talk a lot about the mobile markets, but we also are very involved in the industrial markets. And I'm joined by two of our industrial market experts. Gentlemen, could you introduce yourselves, please?
Glad to be here. David Mayer. I am the Vice President of Industrial and Channel for HYDAC North America. I've got 36 years in industrial products marketing, covering all sectors, and really glad to be able to support the strategy that we have at HYDAC to grow our industrial business, both at the OEM level and the MRO level. I think it's a really exciting time to be part of the industrial marketplace, and we see some really good things on the horizon.
Excellent.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm John Hartsfield. I've been in fluid power sales for the last 32 years. I've been at HYDAC for the last 9 years. And my entire career, I've specialized in filtration and lubrication in paper mills.
So overall, Dave, you've got these key sectors in the industrial MRO markets. You've got people like John on pulp and paper. You've got other people, running point on these other top markets. Where do you see some of these other markets going in the coming years?
Yeah, so we've picked the markets where we have solutions. We like to be considered the experts in these end markets where we have products, services, and expertise to solve the most critical production problems. We see continued investment in these heavier industries. We see more reshoring and onshoring. We see more need for maintenance practices to improve operational efficiency. We see more need to reduce energy consumption, reduce water waste, reduce scrap. And we see continued investment in modernization with new capital equipment being purchased, being installed, and needing maintenance. So again, we feel pretty good about the North American industrial marketplace. We feel really good about some of the innovations that we're developing here at HYDAC to optimize production facilities and to improve the efficiency and overall competitiveness of the industrial marketplace.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into the paper market. John, with your expertise, can you kind of give me take a step back and give me an overview of the entire market?
Well, the market is an old market that we've been in for a long time, and the paper industry has come a long way from where we used to bring in the logs and chip them up and turn them into pulp to now we have mills that just make market pulp, and they send them to other mills where they actually make the paper that they're going to make at that specific plant. And right now, the fastest growing segment of our business is going to be recycle paper, where you see what we call brown and round, that it's unbleached paper, but it's recycled, that they're able to bring to the market and not have to have the environmental impact that they have in a normal paper mill where they have to make pulp and bleach it and everything else.
So you say it's an old market, but is there any new construction? Is there any new growth opportunities?
Each year we're averaging about 4 to 5 new machines, but those are usually at plants that already had paper machines, where they took old machines out of their mill, but replaced them with a brand new machine. That we were able to come up with bigger, faster machines that we can eliminate 2 machines but add 1 machine and produce the same amount of tonnage of paper each year at each one of the locations. But for the last 5 years, the number of mills has decreased and machines by 30%, but our production with the addition of the new, bigger, faster recycle plants has not changed at all.
So the production process, does it vary based upon the type of paper we're producing? Or?
Yes. If you're going to do what we would consider a paper mill, like a traditional one where you bring logs in, you put them in a chipper, you put them in a digester, you can bleach them with Clo2 if you want to, but then you take the pulp and grind it in and take it and put it on the paper machine and go from there. But then you have other plants that then they take market pulp and they put them in a rebeater, and it's just a large washing machine where you mix up fibers and do the same thing and put it back on the sheet and make paper. Then recycling is a little tougher because most people are not very conscious of what they put in the recycling bin, and you might see a ton of brown paper, but it might have styrofoam and plastics and everything else. So there's very different levels of what you have to do with that pulp once you get it, because they have a DAFT to get some of the plastics and stuff out. And so there's a lot of different ways we can make paper, but each one of them has their own approach.
And so where does HYDAC fit in? I know Dave mentioned service is a big part of what we do through our partners, but in terms of products and our solutions, where do we fit in that whole production scheme?
So right now, HYDAC is the world's largest producer for all the OEM manufacturers, for Valmet, Voith, Metso, and we provide all the filtration and power units for most of the units that come over. For the last 8 years, HYDAC has only not been spec'd on one machine out of all the machines that have come over here. We build the power units in Poland, and we ship them over here to the United States or wherever they're going to go. But HYDAC is the world leader in supply for all new builds and upgrades.
So that being said, what are the trends and what's driving the market? What's driving the pulp and paper business right now?
So the market has really changed because a lot of paper mills used to make copy paper, and copy paper is one of the things of the past that there are some businesses that still require like a hard inked signed paper, but most of the paper you use now in emails, you don't print it off, you just save it on your hard drive. So the demand for copy paper is way down, and we're having to substitute that with more recycled paper and packaging that we use every day. We still will make coated paper where we make milk cartons and other things, but magazine and newsprint and copy paper are way off. But our need for corrugated box material is making up for what we're losing in white paper for those other kinds of copy paper and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I see a lot of plants closing. I know there's been some staff and employment issues in the last few years. Is the paper market dead? I mean, are there anything new coming out of that market, new builds or anything like that?
Well, yes. Like I said, we average about 5 new machines a year and upgrades. And just to give you the scale of what an upgrade costs, you start out at about $500 million. And if you're going to build a whole new machine and put it on site, it's about $1 billion. So it's a huge investment. So like Waco, Texas just got a West Rock facility, and that's a huge financial impact for that local economy that they're going to add 500 jobs and be able to do that. So there's a lot of competitiveness about trying to get some of these recycle plants up and going in their area. But it's a growth and a market that is growing every day.
Let's talk a little bit more. You said that nobody's making copies anymore. I don't know if you call that the Amazon effect or related to today's business where things are a lot different than, say, 10, 20 years ago. How would you describe that effect on the industry? So
we'll start. I think Amazon effect has twofold in my mind. What I would say is the Amazon effect is the need for corrugated boxing. I got 2 packages right before I flew to Bethlehem yesterday in an Amazon bag that was still made out of paper, that they use it as an envelope. And the need for envelopes is very high, and the need for box materials. And everybody still ships with FedEx and UPS, and everything's going in a box there. So the need for boxing paper is, substantially higher than what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Everything used to come in a box. Now everything comes in a box to your local Amazon, and then it shows up. But then the second part of the Amazon effect that is very challenging for me as a manufacturer's rep is now everybody looks on their phone or their laptop and says, hey, I need to buy X, and it's going to be at my front door tomorrow. So our customers are thinking, hey, I cannot believe that you don't have this in a warehouse right now, that it's going to be here tomorrow.
2 days is too long.
So I consider that part of the Amazon effect also, that people's desire for quick shipments, and that's very challenging as a manufacturer.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that. So supply chain, and that's probably a big part of what we assist our customers with. What are the keys for HYDAC and for our partners like distributors and OEMs and manufacturers to meet those demands?
We depend at HYDAC for our distributors to have a large inventory on their shelves and be able to provide what their customers, we share them as a customer, but that their customer has what they need from them, and we act as the support to restock their inventories. If they do not have it, we work very diligently to see how we could come up with something here at HYDAC that can get them out of their jam. But that's where we have to work with our distributors, and they need to use tools like AI to start predicting what the customer will need next and have that on their shelf.
Okay, so AI, how much is that affecting this market?
I would say in the manufacturing part, probably in paper, not that much. But in terms of us as a manufacturer supplying that market, we need to use more of that to predict what we need to be building. I know that we like to forecast in the industry, but I think there's better and smarter ways that AI can help us forecast than we do now.
Okay. So in terms of, let's talk about down to the plant manager. What are the pain points that he or she is dealing with, and how do we help solve those pain points?
So the plant manager is always going to be responsible for the overall wellness of the mill, and he has to control the manufacturing pace and their run time and not downtime, in which for most mills, just to give you an idea of what downtime costs, you could talk about anywhere from $1,500 a minute to up to $5,000 a minute, depending on what kind of paper and how fast it is. So downtime is very critical to them. So if you can predict when you're going to be down through particle counting, water sensing, and other things like that, it allows the mill to make better, smarter decisions of when they need to take downtime, and they can be up quicker versus being a catastrophic failure where they could be down a week. Mm-hmm. So I would say that that's one of the most important things that they need to do as the mill manager is support the technology that we can bring in sensors and awareness for them, and oil sampling. And HYDAC has their own oil sampling program now. We partnered with HYDAC Canada that we do basic, advanced and premium, and we can help them predict what they need to do moving forward just through an oil sample.
Yeah, and those sampling methods are employed at various labs around the world, right? Not just Canada,
yes.
but
yes. And why we use Canada, and there's a misconception with a lot of paper mills that they get it from their oil supplier for free. And what happens is you are a lab that gets 5,000 or 10,000 oil samples today. They have to do those 5,000 or 10,000 oil samples today. And they don't really care if they got a bad number or a bad report. They're going to spit it out and send it back to the customer. If they come to our HYDAC lab, we have HYDAC employees running those samples. And if you see an error code, like an ISO count that's like a 15-15-15, we know that that's an error count. And so our technician will go, hey, there's something wrong, and they rerun that sample right then. That way we try to get that data back to the customer correctly and not make them have a week loss of go take a new oil sample, ship it back, and run it again.
So it sounds like oil care or fluid care and filtration is kind of the foundation. Is that how you would describe it for this market?
I would say that's the backbone in terms of the paper mill, that the lubrication point of the bearings and everything else that is required, and all the way to the winder, which is a more complicated hydraulic system to control the speed of the roll coming off, of the sheet of paper coming off on the roll. But, lubrication and predictive maintenance are the key to being successful in this market.
Okay. And Dave had mentioned something about overall, looking at other parts of the plant. So whether it's the power gen or water supply, those kinds of things, do we offer the whole package?
Yes. So if we look at the powerhouse, typically those mills are going to be much older, and they have Bowsers for the main loop systems, downstairs for the turbines. And we do provide replacements for Bowsers and put oil purifiers in there. We offer kidney loops to be able to do that. Those older machines have the hydrogen seal systems to them, which are very delicate and part of the system. So we have to be very precise in doing filtration for the hydrogen seals inside the generator. So we have that, and we have all kinds of seal water because that part of the plant has a lot of seal water. So we have process filtration where we can go in there and provide them down to 20 micron filtration for their seal water. That way they don't lose oil seal. It's actually a seal gland on their actual pumps that we can help protect. That is, as you start losing pumps and stuff like that, you're gonna lose production.
Wastewater as well?
Wastewater we can do a little bit with, but typically that is a part of the plant unless they want it to, as I say, overly simplified. If it goes right, it's going back to the river or the lake that they're going to, or if it goes left, we can recycle that and try to reduce the impact of how much water they're using from a fresh source. And we do have some solutions for that where we can take their effluent that they're going to return back to the river or the lake, but we can go ahead and filter it a little better and send it straight back into the plant. Now, if we look at the inlet water supply and not just wastewater or treatment, any kind of water treatment, as the water comes into the mill, typically a plant would inject alum, which alum's a flocculant, and then they go to a clarifier. And then they send it to a sand filter. We can replace those with backwash filters that do not cause channeling like multimedia and sand filters do.
And you mentioned earlier predictive maintenance. I would guess that maintenance is a big part of the whole MRO approach, in that if we're not maintaining the equipment, expensive equipment can be replaced a lot quicker than it needs to be.
Yes. And I was talking with Dave earlier this morning, and I said about 20 years ago, International Paper was one of the first companies to ever consider doing a very strong predictive maintenance plan. And they had a maintenance team that would go evaluate each one of the mills and see if they got a passing grade or a failing grade. And they were looking at the mills on how are they doing lubrication straight from the tanker trucks. How are they looking at their drums that they're topping off with? How are they lubricating and filtering at the specific, whether it's the wet end lube or the dry end lube or a hydraulic power unit? And then they would go back and give them a score. And that was 20 years ago. And I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, all the other mills have started catching on because the other mills were being way more reliable. And reliability is such a huge cost savings in not having to do, catastrophic failures.
So where does HYDAC get involved in the process? Are we involved in the planning phase on some of these plants? Is the market educated enough now that they know they need to be bringing HYDAC in early, or are we solving problems after they happen?
No. What we try to do is, like last week, I was in the state of Maine, and we were calling on different paper mills. And what we do is try to have open conversations about what are you doing and where are your pain points. We walk through the mill, and then we give suggestions of where we've seen other mills have issues and tell them what we're doing across the United States and try to help them help themselves. And we see a lot of people out there, and they know that they need to do it. It's trying to get the investment in the predictive maintenance like particle counters, water sensors. Sometimes I laugh all the time that I can sell you that equipment. I can sell you a brand new filter housing and a brand new electronics, but my hardest part of the job after I sell it to you is really to get you to install it.
And seeing the results.
Yes.
Are part of your discussions, some evaluation of, once it is installed, what kind of savings we can see?
We can do cost savings analysis, and we can show you what a minute of downtime costs. They already know those numbers. And just to give you an example, if a paper machine was to break a sheet or have some sort of hiccup, once they quit making paper, it takes roughly about 2 hours to start making real paper again. Everything else is going to be reject and scrap. So just having a hiccup costs a lot of money.
Does our relationships with some of the service providers and our approach or the HYDAC approach to being local to local, is that important for this market?
Yes. With our current large supply chain people that we work with, they're being at the customer weekly, sometimes twice a week, 3 times a week. That is how we succeed, is partnering with those distributors that can provide somebody locally there way more than we can. HYDAC cannot be the person that does all of it, and so we need our local distributors there supporting them daily, and then they give us the feedback that we need to tell them what they need to do to help them.
Okay. And you mentioned particle counters. I know that's a big part of one of the things that we offer in terms of fluid care and fluid conditioning. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So at HYDAC, we're the only company that actually makes their own particle counters, that we don't just have our name put on them. And what we can do is put a inline particle counter on a lube system or a hydraulic system, and then we can get real-time data, and we can transfer that into, most paper mills have what are called a DCS, which that's their computer system, and then they can chart it back in Pi. And so we can look at real-time data, and we can set up alarms within the paper mill of, if you see the particle count do this and go up more or go down, we need to ask questions, what's changing? Because if it goes too low down, we know that the particle counter might have a problem to it. But if you see the particle count start jumping up and going up and up and up, we know that there's a failure going on. And so it alerts the mill, and in their DCS, it can set up an alarm and alert the mill that they need to go look at that right now and try to figure out what's going on. Is their filter in bypass? Do they need to just put a new filter in? What do they need to do to solve their problem and figure out how to get the particle count back to what their target zone is?
And that goes back to being an integral part of our customers' business, through our providers and through our partners, understanding their business as well. Do you have an example maybe of where we provided a solution for a particular problem?
So water ingression is a huge problem with paper mills. And if we look at an example, we look at a dryer section where they're drying the sheet of the paper. And you have dryer cans, and in that dryer section, you can have several different sections of dryers. So you can have section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what we can do is we can put an aqua sensor in each one of the return lines of that section and tie it back in before it goes to the main reservoir. We can see the water go up in the main reservoir, but then we can look at which one of the sections of the dryer is actually causing the problems, where you have a steam leak in a Johnson joint or in a dryer can, and it allows us to isolate and tell them where to begin. That way they're not looking at 100 different dryer cans or whatever, depending on how big the machine is, that they can isolate it down to a very small number and then figure out where their problem is. And if the machine's big enough, they can just valve out that section until they get to it the next time and make it go.
Okay.
So we can give them at least a target zone of where to start looking for the problem.
Excellent. So John, are there some most valuable products that HYDAC offers that you would recommend for this market?
Yes, I would. The biggest thing is going to be filter upgrades and looking at the equipment that your filters are actually going in. One of the things that we have to really focus on in the pulp and paper market is some of these machines are really old. And if you look at a filter housing that looks like it might have come in on the Titanic, or it's very old, obsolescence is something that happens. They were never engineered to last a lifetime, and that's something that we have to talk about, because you're never going to – I can give you the best filter in the world, and if it's going in the biggest piece of junk housing, we're never going to get the results that we're promising you we can provide. So one of the things that we really have to discuss with a lot of older mills is we need to replace this with something new. And then with that, we can talk about on a lot of the new systems, you have to have a double block and bleed system for OSHA and other things. And HYDAC has those type of solutions. We have lube filters that we have isolation and double block and bleed that we can provide to a mill that they can comply with OSHA regulations, because there's a lot of mills that are actually doing filter changes that don't necessarily have the ability to double block and bleed. And we're trying to make them more aware of that daily. Other products that we have are like our accumulators. HYDAC is actually started for accumulators. That's what HYDAC stands for, hydraulic accumulator. And we make all of our accumulators. Most of them are made here in Bethlehem, where we are right now. We make, and Birmingham, Alabama, we make both piston-style accumulators and bladder accumulators in all sizes. And we can help size and get you the right accumulator, whether you're looking for power reserve or shock absorption. And then we have process filtration like bag filters. We have backwash filters like RF3s, RF14s. We have lots of solutions out there. And we have pressure transducers and electronics that you would not necessarily think of a company when you're just having a filter company come in. We offer the full range of filters, filter housings. And one of the things we haven't even talked about on this podcast yet is our filter systems that we have in Leedsdale, Pennsylvania, that we have a whole team developed in charge in Leedsdale that has our filter systems product. And we have filter carts, we have particle counters, and oil water removing systems. And we keep a lot of that in stock in Leedsdale, Pennsylvania. And that is one of the things that really makes us different is if we go back and look at our filter systems products, we have an entire area called our Quick Ship program where we have filter carts, whether it's 7 gallons a minute or 14 gallons a minute. We have some higher volume stuff occasionally that's 25 gallons a minute. We have water removal stuff like our MAFHE, which is a water removal system. We have our NAV30, which is a vacuum water removal system. And then we have varnish elimination, which is either our VU, and that is how we rapidly cool the oil and make it fall out, the varnish fall out like a paraffin waxy material, and we actually filter that out. And we use a very special filter in that. Or we have a VMU, which is a ion exchange version, which that's where we take positively charged resin beads and varnish is a negative charge, and we just basically use our media as a magnet, and we strip it out that way. Both of them have their pros and cons, but for a lot of people, varnish mitigation right now is very new to them, and they don't understand how many problems we have right now in varnish mitigation. Now, if we look at the paper industry, I can tell you 20 years ago, ESDs, electrostatic discharges, never even came up. And now it is a common problem that we see at a lot of calendar systems, sim belts, that the oils are so different and the base material has changed so much that ESDs are something that happens. And that is the main reason that you have varnish. Now, HYDAC, we also have electrostatic discharge elements, which we call anti-static. And we also have a media that we treat, and we have the only media out on the market that does not generate a charge or create a charge, which is called our StatX product.
Right. So you mentioned our sister company, Schroeder, and so having that as part of our offering gives us an advantage. And then also you also mentioned sensors. I mean, there's monitoring involved too. We can offer that as well.
Yes, we have pressure transducers, flow transducers, everything that a mill would need in terms of outside just the lubrication part of the wet end, dry end. We can give feedback back to the DCS or to another monitoring system that they have on there. So we do offer all kinds of sensors, and they're made out of all kinds of materials. So if you have a lot of H2S gas, we can offer it in stainless steel, or we can adapt it to what environment's going to go in.
Excellent. And then we're adapting to the new oils in today's world and offsetting the static electric discharge, and we've got many solutions for today's mills.
Yes, and with our new media, Sustain Micron, it will come standard with anti-static properties. And so that is one of the things that we can really help just with our standard media as we move into the Sustain Micron moving forward, that all elements that have that will be able to go to anti-static right off the bat.
All excellent information. What is the best way for our customers to get a hold of the industrial team?
There are several ways. They can reach out to one of our channel partners, whether it be Motion Industries or another. Motion is our largest pulp and paper supplier, but also you can go online and look at support, and you can ask, and it'll be sectored into Pulp and Paper when you ask, and you can fill out the little questionnaire. What do you have? What mill are you with? And what's your email address and phone number? And it will relegate it back to me, and then I give it to the correct HYDAC salesperson in the territory, and then they forward it on to your local rep, or either the territory manager from HYDAC will reach out, or one of our distributors.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me here today. Appreciate you taking the time to come out. Thanks to all of our listeners out there for joining us on another edition of HYDAC On Tap. We hope you learned something. I certainly did. Look for more topics in the industrial market. I think we'll have Dave and some of his other experts back to talk about those markets. But again, like and subscribe to HYDAC On Tap on your favorite podcast channel. Don't forget to ring the bell for updates, and we'll see you on another edition of HYDAC On Tap.